Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Well, good evening. I guess it's early evening. Hey, everybody. It is Alexia, and you are in the right place at the right time. Everybody, it is What's the Chew? Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are vibing out today to the Queen of Soul, who was all about unity in her community, all about lifting each other up, all about RESBCT, all about intentionality and how we move. And we're listening to A Rose is Still a Rose. If you remember that song, just drop some hearts. Come on and start your watch parties. This is an intergenerational dialogue, and you don't want to miss it. So, hey to everybody who just started tuning in. If you are interested in joining this conversation, let us know as we continue on with our dialogue. Today, we are keeping up with that conversation around health. So come on, roses. Come on, roses. Come on, be planted, but let us water you as well so you can continue to grow and glow in all the ways. But we're still here. Listen. Come on, everybody. Come on and join us. How's everybody's Sunday going, too? If you're having a great Sunday, drop those hearts. If this is not your first episode with us, drop those hearts. We are just excited to be here with you, and we can't wait to get this conversation going. So don't go anywhere. Remember, go ahead, start your watch parties, get people here, come on and join so you can find out what's the chew. You don't want to miss out on this great conversation. So as we kick off for today, I'll give you a little insight into that. Hey, it is Coach Robin in the house. Hey, Coach Robin. I was hanging out with your cousin yesterday, Coach Robin. TL and I were hanging out with your cuz. And it was just, I got to take a moment to lift this up, right? So listen, talking about community, okay? Talking about togetherness and unity. And talking about how we as a culture support each other and getting back to that, right? We had a community baby shower yesterday, okay? This community baby shower was organized and created by the Movement Church Philly in partnership with Beauty Over Ashes. And the representative founder, president of Beauty Over Ashes is actually here with us today. You're going to hear from her. But the community baby shower was exactly that. Well, let me tell you this. This wasn't just some little community baby shower. You know, this wasn't just some attempt at giving back. You know how sometimes people go places and they're like, oh, well, yeah, I went, but I didn't feel the love. It kind of still felt like charity, so to speak. No. This community baby shower had a DJ. This community baby shower was hosted by the T. Pearson Experience. This community baby shower was decorated by Elated Creations. There was so many giveaways. I'm talking about diapers, wipes, bibs, cribs, playpens, feeding chairs. I mean, you name it, they had it. And it was just a joyous occasion. And so in the spirit of that is exactly what we talk about here on What's the Chew. So I heard one of y'all ask the question in the back, so I'm going to answer it. You're tuning into episode 5. What is the chew, you ask? Well, it is an intergenerational call and response dialogue by us as your Black women guests and hosts and co-hosts and panelists and all those wonderful things. But we're talking about culture, health, education, and wealth. And we're going to go ahead and continue our conversation today around that very important topic of health. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring on our guests. Say hello as they join and drop those hearts to Patricia. Say hi. Monica. Say hello. Elle. And the beautiful Ray of Sunshine. Say hey, everybody. You can come off mute to say hey. Go ahead. Don't worry about it.
Hey, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Yes, ladies. It is so good to see you again. Can you believe it's episode 5? It's crazy, right? So just, with absent of when we took off for Father's Day, which is great because we wanted to honor that occasion, and Memorial Day, episode 5, this time is going by. And it's going to continue to be this great space. So everybody say hello again to Monica, Ray, Patricia, and Erica Lynn. Now, hey, ladies, said Coach Robin.
Hey, Robin.
Coach Robin has been on before with us and we'll be back. And so today we're going to lift up more conversation around health. But here's the thing, okay? This has been a very trying year, 365 days. But if we just focus on even just the past 60 days of things that have happened over this time, there's a lot that kind of comes into play with that. And there's been a lot of things that we've seen to kind of transpire over this time. So as we're talking about health, I want you to kind of center yourselves around a couple of things. And I really want us to focus on us as women, right? How we tend to overextend ourselves and then find ourselves. And I know none of y'all know about this because y'all do very well with balancing. Y'all don't overwork yourselves. You don't have wear too many hats. So I just want you to try to pull from that place if you can, so you can see if you can relate. As you all are the housewives of America, we'll just say in your respective cities. But I want you to channel that space of, oh, let me take off this hat and put on this hat and this hat and this hat and take off this one. And it doesn't matter if you were juggling in just a professional sense and the domestic sense and with family, if you were caregiving, right? If you were parenting, if you were just mentoring, whatever that looks like, I want you to go there, go to that place, and then think about your health, right? And how that was really compromised in that. And so I want to open I want to open our dialogue up first by going to Patricia, because there was some things that you mentioned about history, right? And I always, we have all alluded to the fact that in order to kind of see where you're going, you kind of got to know where you've been. So if you could take us through a little timeline, get us to a space where we can understand like the historical health trauma that we've kind of been through as a people, especially as women.
Certainly. And of course, our health trauma came when we arrived on these shores as slaves. And when you look at how we had to adapt to a Eurocentric style, if you will, or frame, that went counter to our African traditions. Our African traditions were one of cooperation and collective family, if you will, not necessarily family that you were born into. That's counter the idea of competition, of me not versus you, of not the we but the me. And when you think of all of that in the context of us as a culture, you realize the importance of basically forming relationships beyond our families. And this is something that slaves did, even if secretly. And these are things that as early as the late 1800s, there was the growth of Black women's organizations, such as the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs. And these organizations were expressly for the purpose of working together to build change. And that was so important at a pivotal time in our country's history. I'm going to touch on more historically because I had the fortune of working for the National Council of Negro Women, which is an organization of organizations founded in 1935 by Mary McLeod Bethune. I also want to add that we hear a lot about the traditional Black organizations, the NAACP, which was founded in the early 1900s as well. And we know women were involved, but men were the ones that we usually saw in leadership roles. Women were still in the background, though. But we see now the emergence of women who are coming forward, leading Black organizations that are crossing over to help men too, such as the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, led by Melanie Campbell and her Black Women's Roundtable, as well as Black Voters Matter, which is run by Latasha Brown. I know you see her in the news all the time, as well as a brother who is the co-founder. So we want to talk about that because with all that we have to do to liberate ourselves even today against systemic racism, against police brutality, against all kinds of wrongs that are just because we're Black, we need those kinds of change agents, but we also have to be cognizant of self-care when they are running those organizations, because you can burn out and it could be manifested in health issues.
How about that? So the you brought up so many things that kind of just really resonated. And as you were speaking, I saw kind of everybody kind of shaking their head, nodding, because we can all relate. And I think that's the importance of this dialogue too, and the other importance of it being necessary for it to be intergenerational, because wherever you are in the spectrum of life, right, there's some of these things you can relate to. But for those who may be a little younger in their journey, or just starting out their journey into adulthood, especially, some of these things may be happening to you, and you don't even know it. You're thinking that it's just the system, right? Well, this is just the healthcare system. This is what they said to me, so it's okay. These are the assignments they're giving me, so it must be okay, right? Because they would care if they were overworking me, right? Because they got EAP lines and things like that. So companies must care. They have all these other systems in place. But guess what? I was reading an article, and I want to keep the conversation kind of here for a minute. And I got a question. So I'm going to bowl down Manika's alley here first with this question. But before I get to that, I was reading this article. It was an article sent to me by my brother-in-law, and it was about the Black tech industry, if you will. Actually, the tech industry overall, Silicon Valley and all of that. And they were saying so many millennials are quitting those very high-paying positions and roles. And people are like, why? You're starting out making six figures. You know how many student loans and time I had to put in to get close to six figures for some people, or make it to six figures, but they're quitting these jobs. And when you start listening to some of the dialogue, many, especially of the women, one of the women who went on to create, I think it's called Blavity, which is a Black network all centered around, she was like, I was burnt out. It's like you finish one project and boom, you go to the next. So you never really get a chance to find balance. So to our servant leader queen, want to know, how do we balance our roles as servant leaders? Like, what should we be doing from a self-care? All these systematic wrongs that are pinned against us. Like, how do we find balance, especially as leaders, whatever the industry may be, but especially when your role requires just so much of you to give? How do we balance that?
Is that Manika's question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, first of all, just I am so excited to be here today, and thank you for the questions, and this is going to be a really good panel. So I'm just really excited to be here. But I want to say one thing that I want to say, and I'm so glad this is intergenerational, because I get to follow Patricia, who's just maybe 2 years younger than me.
Right.
But
how about 20?
But I am in you know how people talk about perimenopausal. So I'm like in peri-retirement mode. So I'm like almost over this work stuff, but still getting some gratitude from being in the environment. But understanding also, as we move forward in this life, there is so much more to look forward to. So all these life experiences that we have, as we get older, unfortunately, we're all going to experience, we're going to get older. We're going to experience losing tremendously our loved ones, and, having to cope and deal with that and live a life, where, at one point or another, our parents are not going to be here. And that's going to leave a tremendous hole in our hearts. And then we have to worry about, how do we move forward on that? And what do we do to fill those spaces? All of those are learning experiences that allow us to grow as individuals. But when we talk about health and the trauma, I want to go back to something that you said earlier, Patricia, and that is about the systemic discrimination and the racism. So we've always felt inside our hearts, no matter what age we are, that something was going on, and that we were always kind of playing catch up. What we have seen happen within the last year or two, maybe 5, is that we have seen this level of evolvement into understanding from a theoretical perspective what this means. And so Richard Rothstein had written The Color of Law. And prior to that, he wrote The Color of Law from this project called the Mapping Project, where they began to quantify what racism looks like. But we could quantify it historically if we were to go back into our families and really examine from the perspectives of what we hear, you know, about soldiers that come out of World War II and they weren't getting the benefits. And so they weren't able to get the GI Bill to be able to purchase the home. Or even my grandfather, who was a World War II veteran, who was able to actually leave World War II with absolutely no pension and no benefits whatsoever as a veteran, and then move on to work with the railroad out of Oklahoma, which is actually what brought him here. This is my maternal grandfather, and ended up working there and felt slighted his entire life when he was asked to leave the job at age 62. And he was able, because it was time for him to retire, 64, because it was time for him to retire. And while the white guys that he was working side by side with received a pension, he did not receive a pension. So those are examples of what systemic discrimination, systemic racism is that we are actually systematically taken away from the system, and then we come from the vantage point of being born and then wondering why we can't play catch up. And so because of the fact that we're not playing catch up, it is attacking our psyche. But thank God for the last couple of years, we've been able to say, no, we can really point to these things that have actually happened to us outside of slavery that have placed us in a position where we are not able to play catch up. But what I want to ask you in terms of viability is, what kind of catch up are we really trying to do? And this is what happens when you're in peri-retirement mode. You begin to think, are you really trying to play a catch-up game to the mass or to the majority of people or white folks who've always had that privilege? Or are we trying to play, and do we need to play a role in which it works and is suitable for us? So as we look at health, look at the things that we do to promote and improve our health, we need to stop gauging our success on these unrealistic values and these unrealistic goals that are really not meant and created for you to achieve. And that is really the first step to really eliminating some of those trauma and really getting to being in our centered health. So when you talk about the person that says, I'm going to leave that six-figure job and go and start and do a startup, that person understood from their perspective that, look, this is not healthy for me, and I don't need to do this. So
yeah, you make a good point, because that's why most of my career I've been on not working for folks. I said unemployed. That's not what it was. I decided to be entrepreneurial because I found an inordinate amount of stress associated with working in systems where they put me in a role but didn't give me the responsibilities to achieve what they hired me to do.
Right. Absolutely.
That's so true. That's so true. Ray and Elle, I'm just curious because, and especially Elle having worked in so closely, like in the system, I know. So like weigh in on that. Like how is this hitting home for you? Whether it's, balancing in our roles, whether it's the historic nature of things, like the keeping up with the Joneses, Johnsons, Jacksons, Wands, whoever they may be, try to keep up with everybody. That's number one, is what Monica said. But Elle and then Ray, please weigh in.
I think just coming from the perspective of Alexia, how you spoke about the engineer and how they left a six-figure job to go ahead and do something different. I think for me, I literally traveled a very similar journey with like being a nurse and becoming a nurse at 21, and all of my peers who also graduated are making maybe $30,000 and $40,000, and I'm making close to $80,000, $90,000, and just having all of this free money, but understanding over a few years that money came with a cost. And becoming a nurse because being just very innocent and like wanting to help people and be there for people, and like just kind of that overall goal of like being a helper, and then going into the hospital and realizing that like, oh no, they pay you well because you're going to work for it, and you're going to overwork yourself. You're going to be stressed. You're not going to have enough staff. One of the community hospitals that I worked with that is now closed, we didn't even have enough, and I can talk, plainly about it because it is closed now, but working overnight, not having the supplies I need to clean my patients, wash my patients, care for my patients. Like, how am I supposed to help them? And this hospital is not even equipped with the stuff. We don't have enough staff to, do the things that we're supposed to do. And so, yeah, you make a nice amount of money, but like at what cost? And you're burned out and all these things. And yeah, they have an EAP, but the good therapist that you find a relationship with, guess what? They don't take your insurance. So now you're paying $400 a month for therapy, and you can't really afford a relationship with. Guess what? They don't take. Oh, it was an echo. Like, what is? And so
because it was so good, it needed to be repeated for the people in the back. That's what I heard. Keep going.
And so I really find that being in a situation where I am younger, and so I'm not in the same generation that my parents are in, where my dad is not even 60 and he didn't feel well at work the other day. And he literally said these words to me: I have to tough through it. I don't feel well, but I felt worse and done more. So it'll be fine. My dad was vomiting. He did not feel well. He said he felt lightheaded and dizzy. I said, Dad, just go home. He said, no, I have to tough through it. I'm not that same person. I'm like, oh, I don't feel well. I'm stretching myself too thin. And so just kind of knowing the balance of, like, for myself personally and for ourselves personally, what is too much and what is your limit and what are you willing to give, and how much of yourself is too much to give.
And very often we don't want to leave because we're afraid we'll lose our job because we're not judged by the same standards.
So true. So true. I want to lift up a couple of things that came up in the audience. Yeah, right. You work for, and no, it's not me. That's somebody else on my account, me. But you do work for it. You work for that which you receive. And one of our previous guests also mentioned the fire. Entrepreneurship should be included in the school curriculum, and not just because somebody may graduate and decide they want to start their own business. But guess what? I used to always even tell the leaders that I supported, you are running a business. Like, think of this as if this was your own, but operate in that capacity. And I know that it's a little different as it relates to the extension or how you pull yourself, but it still is necessary to look at it. So I agree with that. And Elle, you brought up many, many good points about the balance for us as servant leaders, the intentionality. Like, self-care seems to be this buzzword that popped up within the past decade, but it's not uncommon, or it's not a new. It's probably terminology that has been used over time, but sometimes, and I want to kick this to oh, look here, Coach Robin has a comment: working for someone else is messing with my fun. Entrepreneurship is my exit plan. Right, it messes with your fun, and we know it is different when you pull yourself, when it's your own work, and when you stretch yourself and you're working for someone else, especially when you don't feel valued. I think that's oftentimes too why people are so ready for the pivot, because it's like, I don't feel value here. If I'm going to do this type of work, I might as well do it for myself. So Ray, from your own perspective, what about this resonated for you as far as the balance, the and how we as women will stretch ourselves until we can't stretch ourselves anymore?
Yes. I did want to speak on that, but I wanted to pivot a little bit because you mentioned something earlier. I know Patricia mentioned something about in the question you talked about Mary McLeod Bethune and other activists who battle self-care with liberation, or how to continue liberation and also take care of their self-care. I kind of want to touch on that because you also spoke on how we make our space, how we focus on our space. And if we focus on what self-care means to us and what liberation means to us, and kind of blend that within our space, I think that you can definitely make sure you are carrying out anything that you need as far as self-care. So when we look at people like when we look at people like Tamika Mallory, When we look at those like Amanda Seales, I know she's a little, but when you look at people like Amanda Seales, you see that their work is their self-care and it's liberation for our people. So when you focus on your own space, your own skills, and who you are, that's self-care, but just do it and serve the community and serve the space that you're in. But I definitely make sure, Alexia, that I put my self-care first. My theme, I always joke with my colleagues. I'm an elementary teacher, so I always joke with my colleagues that my theme for my classroom is wellness. So you're coming in and you have plants and you have running waterfalls, and the children are like at peace because we put wellness first and self-care first, even in the classroom. And so yes, my theme is wellness. Some people may have Disney princesses, but I have wellness. So I make sure that I incorporate self-care even in my career.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. Your space, your daily space needs to be promoting self-care.
You brought up what you just mentioned, Ray, and I love what you said about you gotta define what it means to you. And Elle laugh about this because we've had this conversation as well. But I used to think, I used to say, oh yeah, I got self-care, I got my outlets because it's when I'm helping people and doing all of this work. And I quickly found out that I did have to create some division for what it means to me, right? So I agree. I think Tamika, her self-care and her liberating her community, those probably go hand in hand. But when I tried to do that, that's why you can't keep up with the whoever's, because when I tried to do that, it did not roll the same. I found myself even more depleted because I was pulling it from every angle that it would come. So I think that the piece that I took probably the most to heart is it has to be what you design it. So that being said, you got to know what it is. So Monica, like, how does this? So Ray mentioned that, and even Coach Robin mentioned what a great way to teach your children about wellness. Like, how do we start to make this even more part of the norm, right? Sometimes these things of self-care, wellness pop up. And because they popped up like this, they fizzle in the very same way. How do we make sure this remains like a consistent part? Just as much. So how we speak about work ethic, and sometimes that's the fight that happens, or the debate that happens against the furthered living generation and the younger. How do we create this as like, yeah, you got to have good work ethic. You also got to have good wellness ethic too.
Absolutely. And, some of the things that I look at is that you have to really be intentional and just thinking about what you do, Ray, in the classroom with the waterfalls and the and I started visualizing the yoga mat and techniques and all of that, which is really so important and everything. And it's that you just simply do it. You just, you don't apologize and you don't do it. So in our workplace, if there's an opportunity for you to get outside for 15 minutes and walk around, just around, just around the side of the building, you simply, do what you have to do and not sit at your desk 6-7 hours in a day and just go out, just for lunch and then come back and regurgitate yourself. So having a wellness ethic is not only about what we do physically for ourselves, but really placing ourselves in environments that really work for us, that makes us and continue to make us well. And that includes the people that we interact with. If it's in the workplace, who are we interacting with? Who do we talk to? Who makes us feel good and really empowers us to do the work that we need to do? And I can also be your wellness partner also. But the self-care has to really be in sight, particularly with African-American women, because typically in the workforce, we're less trusted. We're less valued as an employee. We're typically very much overworked. And if we can center ourselves to a point to realize that we are of value, and that our health is just as important, and the work that we're doing is just as important as everyone. But no matter what we're doing in the workplace, if it's a Black woman who's leading it, it's typically not at the same level of everyone else that is leading their project. So it's always a constant battle to keep that up. And so you're really essentially your own wellness ethic. You're really having to center yourself and really having to block and create those barriers that say that you're good enough, that that you're not good enough. And you have to keep continuing to tell yourself that you are good enough, because you never would have gotten to this point. And if you weren't. So it really is essential that from the core of what we are doing, that we do take the time to do that. I have been in office environments, and all of you have been as well, where we've seen people just take off and they do the vacations and they do all that they can and this, that, and the other. We're working like, scared that if we don't come to work, we're going to get terminated, and if we don't get this project out. And so, but, I don't see the same level of effort placed, instilled upon my coworkers. They don't feel that. They never have to really feel that because, well, I mean, they could, but in most cases, they don't have to feel that. Mm-hmm. Exactly. They don't. So you're always under this constant thing, but remember, it's an artificial it's an artificial barrier to place you, to kind of keep you systemically or systemically in a place of stability. So you're not rising. So again, it's all about what you're doing and really promoting what you do, and take those 5, 10, 15 minutes to walk out or jump on the phone if you need to raise some sand about someone's office.
Take those 5 and can we be real here just for a second? I know we're starting to wrap up, but just let's be real. So Ray is coming from a space of early childhood education, right? And so can we teach them how to take that space then, so that they don't take their own lives or something else later, down the path, because they've been right? Because whether it's now or later, we got to address it. Right. And so, I just want to start to get some final thoughts from you all, but there's one piece that I just want to let Ray hit on really quick. What was I know we're talking about balance and things like that and wellness, but was there anything personally, Ray, that kind of really made you center, like, I got to make my class, like I have to operate in wellness, like for myself, for my people, like whatever it was there something that was that trigger for you that made you realize, in me in this position, I need to do this for my kids? Mm-hmm. And if so, what was that?
So I feel like I've always worked with communities that may have adverse childhoods. I think I spoke on that the last time. And so with those kind of childhood, with those kind of environments come a lot of trauma. So when they come to school, in any school, regardless of their home life, the school should be a safe place for them. It's full of professionals who are ready and willing to help. And, so it's a safe place with someone that can help them. So with dealing with these communities, I know that we diagnose before we diet, maybe, or we diagnose before we even talk to the child and see what's going on. We're very, very quick to diagnose. So that would be that would definitely be something that was a key turning point for me when I said, okay, I need to do something in my space that liberates or that helps my people, and start with the children, because we do have an increase in suicide in adolescents, especially not especially Black adolescents, but also Black adolescents. And so it does start with just listening to the children in the classroom, with just allowing them to express their opinion, showing them, listening to a story they're telling, just making them feel heard and seen, and forget about, a child is not supposed to be heard and seen, because that's what creates the trauma. when they practice being heard and seen, they're always able to come and communicate with you later because they know that they matter. So that is definitely that was, I guess, seeing that in my career has been, what has pushed me to change my space.
I really appreciate that. I'm just going to drop the link in here from some information from the CDC about the ACEs test and study. And Ray, why don't you just tell again? I know you said it last week, but because we may have a few newcomers to our experience and our chat, just explain again that the ACEs.
So the let me see, it's ACE. ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, and it's a test. So the belief is that the higher, the results of the data show that the higher the score on the ACE, the more adverse your childhood was, the more traumatic your childhood was. And those that have the higher score are more susceptible to having obesity. I think last week we were talking about obesity.
Yes.
We focused on obesity. Yes. So, the different mental health issues and physical health issues. But I think specifically we were talking about obesity last week. But yes, so all of and I think we also spoke on all I called it the big mama diseases. And it was like diabetes, gout, heart disease, things like that. So, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's important for us to know. So as we wrap up our conversation for today, final thoughts. We'll start with Patricia, then go to Elle, and then Ray and Monica, if you have anything final to say. But let's start with Patricia. Final thoughts, Patricia.
Okay, well, let me say it's never too late, because I was raised in a family where my mother was silent, even when she was in trauma. And I didn't want that to be my story. So I was fortunate to work for the National Council of Negro Women when I was in my early 20s. And I saw the power of woman power through them. And with strong mentorship, I became them in terms of my leadership abilities, in terms of my advocacy on behalf of women, in a way that honors my mom. So that's why I do this work I do.
Thank you so much. And Elle?
Yeah, I just wanted to encourage people to read your policies, like your HR policies. As we were talking today, something that another nurse I used to work with, one thing that she did, she read the manual front and back so that she knew her rights for her PTO, how much time she was allotted, even down to for our specific situation as a nurse, like what your patient to nurse ratio needs to be in terms of certain patients. And so knowing your rights and what your policies are is very important when you're in a corporate work environment, because you're able to allot yourself those breaks. Because we were talking about how sometimes you can feel that your job would be at jeopardy for taking a break or going out and doing certain things and not wanting to call out from work. And they've allotted certain times for you to be able to call out. And I call them mental health days, right? If you're calling out because today it's just not a good day for you to go to work. And that's okay, because they've given you allowances to take off from work for a certain reason. So just kind of knowing your HR policies and the things that are allotted to you, even your EAPs and things like that, will help you be able to take that space for yourself to have those self-care moments without feeling guilty.
Ooh, that is a wonderful point. And I know Monica brought up about how sometimes people can feel like they can't take the time off because something's going to happen. And guess what? Let's just address the elephant in the room, and especially because this was my experience. Yeah, they might. They might find a way to kind of circle around and let you go or demote you. And I'm going to come off my pedestal because that's a whole nother conversation. I don't want to take over anything. But nevertheless, you'll be okay. You will bounce back, and not bounce, like you will evolve. You will glow. That cannot stop you. If they choose to operate in that space of vileness, that's not you. So don't internalize that. So know your rights, like Elle said, know your policies. Like Monica said, take the time if you need to. And I know it can be fearful and you're like, yeah, but I got this going on and that going on. And just continue to create a space for you to be able to still take care of yourself.
And let me just add that what you're saying can be rooted in fear of losing an income, fear of losing your house, your car, blah, blah, blah. But fear is a manifestation of doubt. And if you doubt you can achieve something, you fear doing it. So be fearless, because if you're in that toxic environment, you don't belong there anyway. And you probably have some idea in your head for how to not only liberate yourself, but make some serious money. Go for it. Don't have the fear.
And she told me that too, y'all. So she's not making it up. And it's true. Okay, let's keep going. Ray, final thoughts for our wonderful audience that tuned in today. You're on mute.
Some good thoughts. Now, I think my final thoughts are, I think kind of circling back to combining liberation with self-care, because it's so close to my heart. I love that question. But I think last year we were so overwhelmed with what to do during all like the protests and things. Should I be out there on the front line and things like that? But I just want to double down on to liberate your spaces, to liberate your, I would liberate the classroom, the children in our classroom. Elle would, do the healthcare, we do our part where we are, and it would become less overwhelming. So that's my final thoughts.
Do your part where you are. How about that? That way it doesn't feel so overwhelming. And I remember Monica telling me that as it relates to sharing our history. Like not saying we don't have a responsibility to know, the history of us as a people, but no, let's start with our own family, and then go from there. All right, Monica, what final thoughts do you have?
Well, first of all, I just want to say everyone is absolutely correct in terms of what we do, but really staying, Ray, where you are and operating from that vantage point is the most important thing, and it's less stressful for us, and it's less traumatic as we try to combat our health ethnics. I also want to talk about Erin when she talks about the HR policies, the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program is highly important. And one of the things that I want to say, particularly persons of color, is that, usually EAP allows you 6 visits to a therapist, and the therapist is phenomenal. If you ever had opportunity to go in and speak to someone.
Say that, yes.
It is, therapy is amazing. I used it during the time that we went through the golf situation with the Grandview 5.
Can you explain that?
Yes.
Yes, I'm one of the 5 golfers that made national news 3 years ago when we were kicked off a golf course and police called on us. Because they claimed we were golfing too slow. It happened around the same time as Starbucks and the same time as the train incident that happened, the wine train incident where they kicked the ladies off because they were, quote unquote, speaking too loudly. So, so in addition to that and work and even being mayor of my town, all of those things kind of culminated together, as we had the pressures of all of that. And we always feel that we need to be doing more. So I don't have children and I don't have a husband. So now I'm feeling I have to take care of the entire community. Not necessary. It's not necessary to do that. It's not necessary to do it in the workplace. But as we close today, it's important to realize that the wellness and your inner peace is inside you. And just like Patricia had alluded to earlier or had mentioned regarding her mom, I too had a very silent mother, and she knew I was a demon child because I didn't have, that same level of silence that, inside of me. And I don't know if that's for better or for worse, but I just want to say it's always best to express what you need to express, because that is what, keeps you sane, and it keeps you liberated in a sense. So take care of yourself. You are all you have, and they will replace you in a hot flash minute. They won't even wait for your, for them to sign off on your workplace policy. They'll have that job description up and people vying for your position before you even get in the ground good. It's not worth it.
It is not
I've seen
worth it at all. Patricia's heard this story. Elle's heard this story, but I'm gonna say it one more time because Monica brought it up, so it's not my fault. But they won't. I remember when my mom passed, going on 3 years ago, and she worked for this organization for 30 some plus years or what have you. And when she passed, they called, and I thought, they were calling express condolences. They're like, "Hi, we're just calling to see when we can come and pick up Omega's equipment." And I was like, okay. So they will. So you got to take care of you because no one else will take care of you like you will. We are so grateful for this opportunity to have this conversation. We just want to also give a special shout out to the African American Heritage Association of Virginia. We have given you a lot to chew on, right? We've talked culture. We're talking health. In the future, we're going to talk about education more and wealth more, because I know we hit on those very intentionally. But as the final thing, I just want you ladies to share. We do this a lot on our sister show too, the Coco Connect. Well, just recently. But I want you to each share. I'm going to start with Ray. What is one word to describe your Coco Queen superpower? Okay. So if you could describe, so like, for instance, I'll give you an example. I usually refer to myself as the Coco Mom Evolved. Okay. And I say Coco Mom Evolved, Coco Queen Evolved, because my goal is to help lift up myself first, make sure I'm good, but I love to lift others. Like that is my gift. I feel like I'm here. That's my purpose. So we're going to start with we're going to start with Ray, go to Elle, Monica, and then Patricia. One word. What is your Coco Queen superpower? Sound off.
Oh, okay. So my Coco Queen, I think I understand. My Coco Queen superpower. So what do I give? What do I?
Yep.
Okay, I give. I think I encourage. You can do it. You've got this. You're going to grow. This is your time. Let's go. That's it. That's me in the classroom with my friends. Like, I think I'm encouraged. Okay.
All right. Superpower, encouragement. All right. Elle.
I think that I am the supporter. I think that in this new chapter, I realized that I can't do it all, but I can help those around me who have an idea. I can help their idea grow and support them in the way to kind of get them going. So my Coco Queen superpower is the supporter.
Ooh, and we're going to take a brief pause here. Those of you who are watching with us, please drop your Coco Queen or Coco King superpower in the chat. We'll lift that up too, because LaFarn said, hope and inspiration, showing others the way. Come on, Coco Queen. All right, so let's pivot to Monica. What is your Coco Queen superpower?
Well, I'm going to say flexibility, because I am able to pivot and do it in a way that it appears I've been doing it for a long time. But, I strongly believe that the level of flexibility is important, because it allows you to take on the new challenge and encompasses a skill set that allows you to expand yourselves in a different direction always. So I can say flexibility.
Ooh, that's a good one. Flexibility. Love that. Love that. And so we got to lift up Coach Robin, who said that her superpower is big sister advice. That is her Coco Queen superpower. I would also add to that, she does give really good big sister advice, especially if you fall into the grown newlywed category. Okay, so that's your people who are like 40 and over and getting married, whether it's the first time or second time or third, whatever happens, no judgment zone. But she is great with that sort of advice, being that her journey as well. And so last but certainly, of course, not least, Patricia, what is your Coco Queen superpower?
I would say it's bridge builder across differences.
That's it, right? Drops mic, walks off StreamYard.
That's it.
It wasn't even enough time for me to type it in the chat, but I'm gonna do it
because
anyway.
All of you are intergenerational. And, there are people who say millennials don't get along with baby boomers. Look at us.
That's right. Look at us. Look at us.
All of us.
We are a chosen people. We want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Patricia, the bridge builder, Ray, the encourager, Elle, the supporter, Manika, the flexible one. She's stretched off the what was that one? The incredible. She's the stretching one. Okay, she's stretching all around. She brings the arms around us, and by our powers combined, we are the wonderful women here from episode 5 of The Chew. We want to thank you so much for tuning in again. Again, please make sure you go follow us on YouTube, Patricia Evelyn Green. Catch us next week as we move forward in our conversation on Sundays, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard
Next week
Time.
after next.
Week
July
after next. Sorry,
Yeah.
excuse me. Week after next, because next week's a holiday again. So we are intentional about our balance. See, but the week after next, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much again for tuning in, everybody. We appreciate you. We love you. Have a great Sunday.
Yeah.